Good evening and welcome everyone. We gather here tonight on what is certainly a sultry evening and certainly a packed house as we formally open the 2018-2019 school year, Pomfret's quasquicentennial, or in layman's terms, as Mr. Fisher mentioned, our 125th anniversary. This year promises to be filled with great excitement, celebration, and success. I'd like to share a few thoughts with you tonight about one idea that we can all think about this year that will strengthen ourselves and strengthen our community. In the name of full transparency, I got the idea from this talk from an old friend, a gentleman named Rick Melvoin, who was once upon a time, until last year, the head of the Belmont Hill School. When my largely technology-free summer vacation came to an end in early August, I found myself drawn back into the world of Wi-Fi and emails and texts, Instagram, and admittedly Netflix and Amazon Prime. One evening I came across a series called All or Nothing, New Zealand All Blacks. Some of you may know that the All Blacks is the New Zealand's famous national rugby team. The team's name comes from the famous black uniforms they wear in every match. I certainly had heard of the All Blacks, and they were mentioned in a book that many of the faculty read this summer called The Culture Code. But I was intrigued to learn more about this iconic team and the reason for their enduring dominance. The series was enlightening, it was quite enjoyable, and inspired the thoughts that I'd like to share with you tonight. Most experts would agree that the All Blacks is the greatest team in the history of rugby. They have won 75% of their games in their history, which is a stunning winning percentage in any sport. That New Zealand has a population of just 4.7 million people makes this an even more remarkable achievement. As I watched the series, and then as I did a little research on the team, I was struck by a core value that explains, at least in part, this team's virtuosity. That value is an almost complete lack of entitlement in its players. The members of the All Blacks do not believe that being on the preeminent team in the world gives them any undue privileges. They don't think they're anything special. At one point, the narrator hammers home this point. Humble to the end, he says, that's the All Blacks way. It's a legacy that's stitched into the very fabric that makes up the black jersey. They are gifted and skilled players for sure, perhaps the best in the world. But the prowess of this team comes from the players' abiding belief that they have a responsibility to prove to their families, their teammates, the citizens of New Zealand, and to themselves that they are worthy of having been chosen to sustain and extend this legacy of brilliance. Author Jamie Smith, an English national rugby fan, who has historically hated the All Blacks, wrote an article recently in the Financial Times trying to explain the origin of their superiority. He wrote, and I quote, "New Zealand's prevailing egalitarian culture runs through the All Black setup, with the star players expected to clean up the locker rooms after games and training. The team also operates what players refer to as a no-jerks policy, which ensures that troublemakers or overinflated egos do not last for long on the squad," unquote. Actually, it's not a perfect quote. He used a word other than jerks, but I can't use that word here. Star player Beauden Barrett was the World Rugby Player of the Year in 2015. After following that great season with an even better one, he won the award the next year as well. His response? He said, and he said this quite bashfully, "I'm a little bit surprised, but extremely grateful. I'm one small part of a great team." There's no entitlement there. In so many ways, the All Blacks stand in stark contrast to much of what I see in our world today. Entitlement, which is the belief that we deserve to be treated as special, that we have a right to do or get what we want just because of who we are, is a dangerous and growing trend. During the research that I did for this talk, I read a story about a teenage boy who had been given a Mercedes-Benz by his parents after he totaled one Range Rover and after he lost a second Range Rover to street racing. I read a second story about a teenage girl who offered up her iPhone to be destroyed in a physics experiment because, and I quote, "Daddy will just buy me a new one." What does this say about our culture? Nothing good, I'm afraid. In her book Unselfie, Why Empathetic Kids Succeed in Our All-About-Me World, Michelle Borba discusses the dramatic increase in the number of young people who have inflated beliefs about themselves. She explains that the world today seems intent on making people feel superior even when they may not deserve it. She points out that youth sports leagues regularly give out trophies or ribbons to players who don't win tournaments or games, or for that matter, even come in second or third place. I imagine this may have happened to some of us sitting here tonight. Participation trophies are quite common nowadays, but they may actually create more entitlement and cause more problems than they're worth. I'll come back to that idea in a moment. Borba, in her book, further points out that we are living in a world in which the Papermate pen company is making more purple pens for teachers than red ones these days, because students have reported that red pens are too harsh and judgmental. And we're living in a world in which some Fortune 500 companies are hiring praise consultants to teach managers how to properly compliment young employees. Praise consultants. Has our society become that concerned about sparing people from adversity and disappointment? The more we treat people as entitled, the more likely they are to act entitled. The Journal of Youth and Adolescence published a research article not too long ago showing that 2/3 of college students believe their professors should give their grades special consideration if they tell their professors that they are working hard. 1/3 of college students believe they should get a B just for showing up to class. And 1/3 of college students believe their exams should be rescheduled if those exams disrupt their vacation plans. These are troubling reports. You may be asking yourself, so what? It may seem like entitlement is really just standing up for yourself, but it's not that simple. Standing up for yourself when you have done something praiseworthy is admirable. It's good. But entitled people have inflated beliefs about themselves without actually doing anything to deserve the praise or the rewards that they so desire. In an article he wrote for the Philippine Star, columnist James Lafferty describes the problem with entitlement mentality as, and I quote, "as a disease that rips the soul out of a person. It leaves people alive physically, but broken mentally. It leaves weakness instead of strength. It results in playing a game of pass the blame when things don't go as planned. It's a disease I would not wish on anyone. It just sucks the initiative, the self-determination right out of a person. Once you think everything is a privilege, once you think a privilege, is a right, and you're angry for not having that, you are lost." End quote. Dr. Joshua Grubbs and Dr. Julie Exline, two university professors, have done extensive research on entitlement. And their findings show that having an entitled mindset often leads to feelings of disappointment, suffering, anger, resentment, and misplaced blame, which they find damage relationships and stunt personal growth. As an educator at a school with the abundant resources, amazing facilities, and exceptional teachers that we have at Pomfret, I worry a little that we may take everything we have here for granted, that we will feel entitled to everything we have, that we will feel entitled to get the grades that we want, entitled to get into the college that we aspire to attend, entitled to get the job we want at the salary we think we deserve, entitled, in fact, to a good life. But these things are privileges that we earn, that we have to work for, not God-given rights that we deserve just because. As this new school year begins, let's remember that we are all here because of what other people have done for us. Other people have made it possible to be here. You students are all incredibly intelligent, talented young people. and you had to make it through a competitive admission process to be here today. But were it not for your parents or grandparents who are paying your tuition, or for some very generous donors providing funds for financial aid, you likely wouldn't be here today. It's a privilege to be at Pomfret, to be sure, but it's not a right. Happily, in my time at Pomfret, I have not sensed at all that entitlement is coded in this school's DNA. I have rather seen many instances of modesty, determination, self-sacrifice, grit, and learning from failure. And these many examples of what Pomfret is give me reason for optimism that we can resist the temptation of entitlement thinking. Our motto, to strive valiantly, encourages us to combat the entitlement mindset. And generations of students and teachers have done just that. At Pomfret, we work hard, we aspire to humility, and we embrace struggle. These are some of our most enduring and most admirable qualities. So I'm not suggesting that anyone here tonight is entitled. But the truth is that our world is increasingly holding up this disheartening attitude as something to aspire to. And there's a risk that, like Odysseus's men succumbing to the call of the sirens, we may be seduced by the lure of entitlement. So what are we to do to minimize this issue, to immunize ourselves against this so-called disease referenced by James Lafferty? I offer you Lafferty's own words again, which I think capture it beautifully. He said, and again I quote, "So adversity is the vaccine against entitlement. Not purely adversity, however, but the perspective that it brings. Many people who suffer from entitlement, in simple fact, do not understand reality, the reality of how the world lives, that life is about suffering, that life's greatest moments are in the achievement of something that took effort. There is no lasting joy," he said, "in getting everything in life handed to you." End quote. Great words to live by. We will all, students and faculty alike, face challenges this year. Achieving success in our many endeavors is not guaranteed, and it is certainly not our right to simply get what we want. An A in Mr. Martin's advanced bio class is not simply going to drop out of the sky and onto your transcript this year. Making the starting lineup for the first game won't simply be bequeathed upon you because you showed up at practice. You won't become a prefect next year if you don't actually demonstrate leadership in some capacity throughout the course of this year. Steve Hansen, the coach of the All Blacks, offered these words at the end of the documentary. This is a team of ordinary blokes trying to do something extraordinary. Sounds to me like Pomfret School. Everyone here is, like the members of the All Black, more than capable and motivated. But in the grand scheme of things, we are ordinary people who together are trying to accomplish extraordinary things. So let's take a page from the All Blacks this year. Let's be countercultural when it comes to entitlement. Let's adopt the values of self-discipline, struggle, and even failure. If we embrace this way of living, if we reject entitlement thinking and strive for something much loftier, there's no limit to what this year can bring for each of us and for all of us. I consider it an honor and a privilege to be a part of this amazing community, and I hope everyone here tonight feels that way. We all have the chance this year to strive, grow, and do phenomenal things. This was the hope of our founding headmaster, William Peck, 125 years ago, and it's my hope for all of us tonight. So let's have a wonderful year. I want to wish us all the best. I want to wish Pomfret a happy quasquicentennial. It's a word that just flows right off the tongue. I want to thank you for listening, and I want to wish everyone a good night. Thank you.